Are you really in control of your life? Or are these ideas and ideologies and belief systems controlling what you think are your personal choices and decisions in life? You're not being yourself. You're being what you've been taught to be. You're behaving in ways that your thinking is now governing. Hello, I'm Matthew Zoltan, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk about feeling out of control. The thing to understand is we don't really function the way we think. How we think we function, how we think we should function, is consciously aware of and willfully in control of our life and our existence, from our thoughts through to every single action that we perform, and even the outcome of those actions. But the truth is far from that. We are driven from a force within us of thousands of years of human conditioning. We don't know the extent to which this exists within us, but as much as you can remember any history of the human being, anything that human beings have been up to, that's inside of you. That's all part of you. The other way we function is from the natural, immediate sense of our existence today in response to the world around us. So we have two very powerful driving forces making us think, do, want, behave the way we do, and end up with the life we have. Very powerful forces being, one, the human condition, which is not unique to any one of us, but is shared by each and every one of us. And our own individual sense of ourselves moment by moment as a living organism. One becomes our thinking through a repetition of ideas and beliefs and conditionings of thousands of years, or at the very least of our own lifetime. And the other becomes our thinking out of a direct sense, being stimulated by our environment and the world around us. So one is pain and ignorance, and the other is literally genius, because that direct sense of ourself that responds to a situation around us is triggered by that situation, comes into existence out of us as a direct, knowing, sensed response to that, and that is formed, if you like, or being a response to the external situation. It is the perfect and only response we can have. And in this sense, it's genius. Comes out of nowhere, is the perfect, exactly the thing to do, exactly the response to have, and therefore it works. So one is the response of the living organism, the intelligence and the genius of the living organism, of the natural state of any individual person. And the other is the response, or the reaction actually, driven by thousands of years, or at least a lifetime, of conditioning, of ideas, of beliefs, of pain, of hurt, of biases. All of these, both of these are existing, both the sense of ourself and these thousands of years of conditioning exist inside of us. And out of this, we expect ourselves to be in control of our life. We're not in control of our life. We have been taught to think we are. Religions have said God gave us free will, but when you really look at it, we don't have free will at all. We see ourselves appearing to have free will when we choose to, on a very superficial level, make a choice or decision in day-to-day life. But what drove us to make that particular choice and that particular decision? So many things, so many preferences, experiences from our past. We may have had a bad experience with this particular situation, which was similar to the situation of our life today, and so we react to it badly out of our pain, creating more distress with that situation today, creating problems and confusions and mistakes in that situation today, and in a sense, replay our past in our present. Or we might have a very spontaneous response, not based on pain, not based on anybody else's ideas, not even based on our past experiences so much, but more based on our genuine bodily sensation, our gut sense of what we feel in the moment of being triggered by the external stimulation, of what we feel in the moment of being triggered by that life circumstance. So this I would term as natural intelligence, and the other is accumulative intelligence. One is natural to the living organism that you are, and therefore is your unique state, the way in which you were born, how you came into this world, and inherently what you came into this world as an expression of. And the other is what you've learnt to think about yourself a few years into your life, when you were taught to think and taught what to think. And once you were taught to think and think about yourself in a certain way and think about life in a certain way, so this became more the governing factor behind each and every decision you make. So from that point on, are you really in control of your life? Or are these ideas and ideologies and belief systems controlling what you think are your personal choices and decisions in life? You're not. You're not in control at all. We're not supposed to be in control of life. Life is a dynamic event. We are part of that life. We are not something that lives separate to life and can control life. We're as much a part of the natural world as any other animal on the planet. And what happens as a part of what happens in our life, only happens as a part of what happens in the life of all other creatures on the planet. I don't mean that in some mystical sense, I mean that very practically. We are thrown around by life all the time. And thinking we should be in control gives us a lot of distress when we discover it's very, very tiring, very, very difficult to be in control of not only what we do, of how we feel, what we do, and the outcome of what we do, what happens in relationships with other people. Are you in control of any of that? Do you really think you should be? Do you really think you need to be? Or is being in control of all of that coming back to thinking you can be in control of your thoughts or in control of how you feel? And these feelings and thoughts that drive what you think you want and drive what you have been taught to want and drive you in directions against what you don't want or have been taught not to want. There's a lot more in there driving your life, driving your decisions in life, which are controlling you from deep inside yourself. So there's two things in there driving you. One is this ocean of conditioning and ideas and experiences that are made up of your life experiences and the life experiences of other people as well. And the other is your own clean, direct, felt sense in immediate response to a circumstance now. And that's rare because we don't listen to our bodies enough. That's listening to our bodies. That's the sense that our body naturally has, as any other animal has, to respond immediately exactly as you feel to respond in any situation. This is not a reactionary response. A reactionary response is built up and maintained and made up of all of our past experiences and all of our biases, all of our preferences and of all our belief systems. And out of our beliefs, out of our preferences, out of our biases, we have a reaction to life, which means we are opposing life at every minute. We are trying to control it and make it be the way we are. The sense response is not a reaction, but it is an inclusive response and receptor to life as it is, beginning as the receptor actually. And so what we receive from life as a sensation inside of us, that sensation becomes our response to life. And so we're in that dance, in that flow with life, in receiving and responding, receiving and responding. And when we're living that way, we are in a very dynamic, extremely intelligent state. Not the intelligence of thinking, because the intelligence of thinking is actually ignorance, but the intelligence of the body. The reason I say the intelligence of thinking is actually ignorance, because the intelligence of thinking is made up of a past history of experiences, and that's got nothing to do with life right now. And so in that sense, that past knowledge cannot help us understand our life or ourselves right now, but only causes us to be ignorant about these in trying to work them out through past knowledge. Whereas our direct sense of something, our body's response, is only coming into existence at the moment of receiving and responding, in the very instant of life in which we are living it. This is the genius of the body, of the natural state of the body, that there is a direct mimicking, a direct sense of what it's receiving. So we receive and we respond. And in that we have only one response. We're not confused. It is a form of intelligence that's completely beyond any dualities. There's not, oh, I might do it this way, I might do it that way. It comes before that thinking, when there's just the immediate sense of, how do I want to do it? How do I want to respond? What is my response isn't actually governed by what I want. Yeah. So even wanting drops out of it, because wanting, again, is thinking. Very superficial. We come back to, well, what is the fact? The fact is, I am cold, I rug up. There's no question about it. Someone is aggressive to me, I stand up for myself. There's no question about it. So the response of the body is one of the body's way of constantly surviving every moment of life, not controlling every moment of life, not being in control, but being intelligent enough to know that I'm not in control of anything. I am just waiting to see what life is telling me to do. And this is the state of the natural animal view. It's not in control at all. It never has the delusion that I'm in control. In fact, it's the opposite. I have absolutely no control, no free will, and no decision over what happens in my life at all. All I can do is pay very keen attention to everything that's going on and respond to that. But the attention of thinking is not fast enough. The attention of thinking, when we're trying to work out how to pay attention, I should see this, I should see that. It doesn't work that way. That's too slow. That's, again, trying to use thinking to do this thing that I'm talking about. If you try and use thinking to do this thing that I'm talking about, you'll discover you simply can't do it, because your thinking won't be fast enough to keep up with life. I'm talking about something that happens way before thinking even gets on board with what's going on in our life. And that is, what is our immediate sense to whatever happens in our life as it's happening? That immediate sense to whatever's happening, coming at us and being received in us from the external world of our life, as that's happening, that is also producing its own response. Because we are, in that sense, a receptor, and we vibrate in response to whatever's triggered that response. That's out of our control. But that is something which is a correct response for our survival through any moment of any time in our life, of any day in our life. And so being concerned about being in control of your life, being concerned about this, is the mistake. Because we can't be in control of our life. We seem to be in control of our life, making a decision about what house I'm going to buy, what car I'm going to buy, how I'm going to respond in this situation, how I'm going to respond in that situation. But we're really only looking at the absolute most superficial surface of thinking there. Yeah. Just beneath that thinking, there's all sorts of conflicting feelings behind that decision anyway for most of us. So we think we want it this way, we do it this way, we change our mind. Yeah. We think we want this person in our life, and a month later we don't want that person anymore. So we don't actually have a depth of sensed understanding in our decisions, which are only made on a very superficial thought-based level. There is no depth in thinking. It's always superficial. It can't get to the depth of our history, and it can't get to the depth of our sensed existence as a living organism. So we have the depth of our history driving us, and that's a force of nature on its own. And we have the depth of our own lived sense of ourselves in the body right now, not governed by our thinking, not governed by our bias, but actually governed by our need to survive and sense what is best for us in any moment. Now, curiously, we may think living this way sensing what is best for us in every moment is a very selfish way to live. But in fact, it turns out it's not. If I do what is best for me in any given moment, really what is best for me as a living human creature at any moment in my life, this will also turn out to be the best thing for anybody else I'm with. Always. You have to experiment with this for yourself. When you reject someone's harmful activity towards you, when you reject that because you sense that for what it is, you go, no, I'm not buying into that. You put them back on where they're coming from. You put them back on their own pain-driven behavior, and this helps them get in touch with that and resolve that for themselves, rather than continuing the pain in the way they're projecting it onto and treating you through that pain to later feel guilt and remorse for what they've done to you. So to end those cycles of painful relationships has to start with knowing what is the sense of what I really need right now. And you will find this always includes, automatically, without you thinking about it, always includes the other person. And this is the incredible intelligence of the inherent nature of every living creature, from the day that it's born up until the day that it's taught to think. And when we're taught to think, we're taught what to think and what to believe about ourselves and the world, and how we should be and how we shouldn't be. Moralities, belief systems come into it, and that screws everything up. Because what happens once we start thinking about ourselves, we lose sensitivity of these deeper, innate, natural survival mechanisms of our own sensory, harmless process that is in the body only. When we lose touch with our own sensitivity, we are able to then do harm. That harm, if we're able to do to ourselves, we're also able to do to others, because we can't feel any resistance to doing that harm. But when you're sensitized, you feel the resistance to doing that harm. So in this sense, you're not looking to control your behavior, to, oversee everything you do. Pray to God to help you, behave a nice way. You'll find actually once you get in touch with this deep sense of yourself in the body, you also get in touch with your morality on a very, very different level. Not a morality that is thought-based, religious-based, or any of those flawed alternatives to being simply a sensory being, but the real sense of what the sensory being wants, and the last thing this living organism wants to do is be harmed or harm anybody else, you'll discover. So for me to harm someone else is more disturbing than doing the harm. So because to do the harm feels more disturbing than doing the harm itself, this disturbance stops me from doing the harm. And this is a natural sense of, this is not good for my survival, this is not good for your survival, this is not good for you, and it's not good for me. So if it's not good for either one of us, we know that because we can sense the harm in that. And this is something we all know throughout our life, but we override, overlook, and in trying to be in control of situations so that we can imagine that we have the control, so we can have the comforts and the relief that we look for from our own disturbances, we ignore these deeper feelings, these deeper sensations of what it really is to be me and what is really the correct thing in this situation. And we go ahead and do what our pain tells us to do. And what is our pain? Where's our pain coming from? It's coming from religion. It's coming from society, it's coming from our parents, it's coming from unresolved issues of our own, from our own past experiences that we have not yet resolved. And all of those are the driving forces of pain, the driving forces of belief systems, the driving forces of ideas that we have imposed on ourselves, or had imposed on us initially, and then continue to impose on ourselves through the way we think about ourselves, which is actually starting from how other people have taught us to think about ourselves. So our thinking, we're using incorrectly. You cannot use thinking in life. We think we can be in control of life, but the reason we can't use thinking to be in control of life is we can't even control our thinking. And why can't we control our thinking? Because there's no one there to be in control. There's no one controlling our thinking. We think that we create our own thoughts, but if you look more closely at this, you'll discover why we also have no control over our thoughts. Where do our thoughts start from? Where did all your thoughts about yourself begin? Did they begin from you? Or did they begin as a child from your parents telling you all about yourself, teaching you about yourself, then from your religion or your culture or wherever you grew up? Whatever people have taught you to think about yourself and about life have become your thoughts. So your thoughts didn't even begin with you, they began with somebody else. So you're not in control of them from the outset. There's no one there that you call you to control those thoughts. When you take on the thoughts of other people, when you take on what other people teach you to think about yourself, you produce a yourself that is the product of all that thinking. So where did yourself come from? It didn't come from inside of you. It came from out there. There is no yourself in control of those thoughts. Those thoughts created this yourself that is a continuation of the thinking and the believing of those thoughts. That's why you can't control your thoughts. There is no controller there. There is no one individual entity thinking those thoughts. Those thoughts are thinking that entity that you think is yourself, that is actually just a continuation of all the thoughts that you've been taught from outside of you to think about yourself. This is not even you. This has nothing to do with you. Where are you in all this? Fortunately, you're still there. But where you are is you're still there in the background of your thinking. Deeper behind your thinking, in the sense of yourself in the body, you have your own living and lived sense of you going on at every second of your existence. And this is quite separate to your thinking. It's unaffected by your thinking, actually. This is your sense of yourself. And how do you get in touch with your sense of yourself? You don't have to. It's already there. You have it there all the time. It's just mixed up with your thinking. So inside of you, and what comes out of the inside of you, is both all of this crazy nonsense that you've been taught about yourself, the pain you haven't resolved and the beliefs that you've taken on. And this is all your history. This is like an accumulation over time. And the other thing you have inside of yourself is that which is not an accumulation over time. And that is the genius of you that is free and clean of any pollution of past historic ideas, that is just the sensory response to the immediacy of your life right now, and that sensory response being the only one you have, being stimulated by the situation. And there you have the genius of nature, the genius of the living organism that you are, that it knows what to do, not in the way that thinking does, but in a much deeper sense of yourself, in how it feels to be you, and what feels absolutely the only thing to do, say, or the only way to respond in any given situation. And this response is already there before you think about it, judge it, correct it, and moralize it. And it's when we think about it, judge it, and second guess ourselves and moralize what we immediately sense, that we ignore ourselves and we do something completely at odds with what ourselves wants to do, and we allow ourselves to be conditioned, we allow ourselves to be manipulated and so forth. In that sense, we lose complete control of the only little bit of control we have. And the only little bit of control we have is that we are true to ourselves. That's the only choice we have. And even that is not available whilst we're overly consumed by all of our thoughts about ourselves and our culture and our nature that we have been taught from outside of ourselves. So we have to come back to relying on, what is it in me that I sense, not what do I think. You can't trust your thinking. You don't need to trust your thinking, but you can trust your own felt physical sense of the living organism of you to guide you through anything in life. And I'm talking on a very practical sense. How do you know you've eaten enough food and when to stop eating? Because you feel it in your body. If you listen to that feeling, if you take notice of that feeling, there is the truth. There is the only point at which you can make a decision for your own good. Anything beyond that, which is your addictions, your behaviors, eating to try and feel better, all of this will only lead you astray. The really good news I have about thought, which at first is going to be very difficult for you to understand, is that thought operates in two ways. One, it is what's come from the outside of you, which are not your thoughts, but everything that you've tried to live up to throughout your life and failed and will continue to fail because it's completely at odds with what it really is to be you. So deep down inside of yourself, you don't agree with any of it, but you've lost that sense of not agreeing with it, and you just find yourself living in a state of confusion, of conflict, of disturbance, not really knowing why. And the main reason why is because you're simply being untrue to yourself. You're not being yourself, not being yourself. You're being what you've been taught to be. You're behaving in ways that your thinking is now governing. And so you're out of control, completely out of control. Back in touch with, where does this thinking come from? This thinking comes from outside of you. And this thinking is not yours. The second thinking comes from inside of you. And this thinking is yours, but it doesn't start as thinking. It doesn't start as ideas and beliefs. It starts as the pure sensation of you in the body. So there's a sensation of you in the body, a sensation of information, a sensation of response to an environment or a stimulation. That sensory response to the outside world around you is the point at which the information that you need for existing in the outside world comes into existence. That point at which that happens is the origins of the thinking and the actions and the interactions that follow that intelligence. And that is the natural intelligence of the body. It's not based on history. You don't learn that. You can't read that in a book. You are born with that. That is inherent intelligence in you that actually has no problem knowing what to do, because there is a genuine feeling and a wholeness of feeling in your system that you just want to be this way. Now, when that sense of you comes out, when you feel that sense of you in there, that tells you everything you need to know about yourself. You also have no control of this, because you're not supposed to have any control, because again, just like there's no thinker of all those thoughts that come to you, creating what you think is you, there is no thinker of the thoughts that come out of you. This is a natural response. So either way, there is no governing thinker of thoughts. There is no one in control. There's no mind, is what I'm saying. No such thing as a mind. There's nothing in between the sensation, the thought, and the expression of that thought into words and actions. There's nothing in between the sensation and the thinking. There's no mind thinking those thoughts. The body doesn't need that. The body already has it covered, because the sensation is an automatic. There's an automatic expression of that sensation into the thoughts, the words, and the actions that are correct for you. Thinking, or what we're calling the mind, is actually the one that interferes, is the activity. It's only an activity. It's an activity that interferes and questions the sensations and the thoughts that are coming out of you. So the sensations that are born of you are born from you, because you're a live being, and that living being expresses itself as it needs to, and there is no questioning of itself. If it's functioning correctly, if you're functioning correctly, you won't be questioning yourself, because you will stay with the feeling of the only way that you need things to be right now. Your only response to the stimulation, your first and original response to any situation. How often have you actually thought, is this just a sidetrack? How often have you thought about this? That if I had only gone with my initial feeling when I met that guy or met that girl, if I've only gone with my initial gut sense of them, I wouldn't even be with them now. I wouldn't be in the mess I'm in now. How many times have you noticed that in life in general? If I'd only listened to myself when I first had my first gut feeling about that situation, and I didn't listen to what other people told me or my thoughts about that as a result of listening to them. And if I had just gone with my initial sense, how much trouble would I have saved myself in life? How often have you asked yourself that? Most of you, I would say, have often had that consideration of yourself. When you meditate, you are not to try and control yourself. That is meditation techniques, that is traditional meditation, that is still this illusion that you are somehow in control. But what is driving you to try and control your thoughts? What is driving you to try and control your thoughts? Why do you want to control your thoughts? You want to control your thoughts because you think that if you can control your thoughts, you can control the way it feels to be you, you're going to control the successes and the failures of your life, all of which is out of your control. The other assumption in there when you want to control your thinking is because you think that your thoughts are really something to be controlled, that they matter at all, that they really make any difference at all. They make a difference when you're caught up in them, but when you're not caught up in them, they have no effect whatsoever. So what do I mean by being caught up in them? One way of getting caught up in your thoughts is trying to use your thoughts for more than a mechanical purpose. That is, trying to use your thoughts to try and improve on yourself, try and achieve a better state. That's not what they're for. It won't work. Trying to use your thoughts to improve your state of mind. There's no mind there to improve any state anyway. And why you're trying to use your thoughts to do that is because you actually think you can do that with your thoughts. Because the thinking produces a thought-induced state. So any thinking, whether you're thinking negatively, oh, I'm such a deadbeat, blah, 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 you think down that track for a while, you'll end up feeling like a deadbeat. Yeah, I'm such an enlightened man, I'm such a wonderful person, I'm such a loveful, compassionate, blah, blah, blah. You think down that track and you'll end up with the thought-induced experiences of those thoughts. They're just two different thought-based illusions. The thing that's being completely overlooked is the thought isn't even there. It's just an image. So when you're meditating, do not concern yourself about thinking at all. If you're trying to achieve something, you will continue thinking. If you're trying to improve yourself, you will continue thinking. If you have a goal of enlightenment, you will continue thinking. This will just keep your thinking going down that track, and that will go on forever and a day until eventually you imagine your way into a thought-induced state of whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And there you are, lost in the delusion of your thought-induced state, thinking it's something real, and it's not. It's just the product of your imagination and the desires that you only have because, to begin with, you're completely disconnected from yourself as you truly were, so felt unfulfilled. So getting back into the connection with yourself as you truly are is to realize that connection has never been broken. You are always sensing your existence. You never don't know you're alive because you always feel the life of you all through your own body. That's it. There it is. But in there as well is some of the pain and distress that's been caused by that secondary thing I was talking about, which is the accumulation of information and pain and memories of your life up until this point and, through the human condition for thousands of years. These are all there inside of you. So these are driving you down the same track over and over again, the repetitious track that the human species has got itself stuck on through trying to get itself off. If you're trying to get yourself off that track, you're imagining yourself to be on that track by the very effort to get off it. If you're trying to make yourself feel better, you're only telling yourself you're not good enough and you will never feel any better. If you're trying to be enlightened, you're just telling yourself somehow you're unenlightened and you will never experience enlightenment. I'm not saying you should experience enlightenment, it's just a thought-induced state anyway. My point being is that if you come back to yourself as you are, you'll discover there's two fundamental things. There's the immediate now here and now sense of yourself in the body, in your sense organs, that are receptive to life and responsive to life at every second of your life. And if you allow yourself to be governed by that, you won't be in control, but you will go with the flow. You will be governed by the entire existence of the natural world that you live in. And therefore, you will find that you're just a part of this whole flow. That there's no individual you there doing all the thinking. There's no thinker. That thinking comes from the outside. And that is why you have no control over it. The thinking that comes from the inside begins as purely as a physical sensation, and you have no control over that either. Control is not, or lack of control is not the problem. Trying to be in control of this massive force is the idea of an ego me, of an individual me who can be in control. This individual me is just made up of more ideas about an individual you. We are much more than that. We are driven by much more than that. The sense of yourself in the body is free of this individual thought idea about yourself. A sense of yourself in the body is a constant receptor and responder to life as it is, and there's no need to be in control. There's a need to be in response, to always be moving with the circumstances of your life and never getting stuck in or on any idea along the way, which is not a small thing. When you get stuck in or on any idea along the way, for the time frame that you're stuck in that idea, you will be at odds with life moving on around you, and you will be in conflict in yourself, simply because you got caught up in yourself. You got caught up in an idea of yourself, of a self that is only made up of those ideas. Come back to what is beneath those ideas in the body sense of you, and you'll be back in the flow again. And therefore, you will realize there is no control, and there's no need to be in control of anything at all. Just need to really understand there is a difference between the thought-induced state that has been put upon you from people outside of you and the sense-driven state that you are born to live from. And that is your natural organic state. That is the state of any animal operating in the flow of the natural world of which it is a part of. And that's it. Okay? Consider this for a while. Don't reject any of it. Really think about it. Don't reject any of it. Don't believe it. Don't disbelieve it. Check it out for yourself and see if this is not true to you. Thanks for listening. I hope that was helpful. Thanks for joining me today. If this talk resonated with you or helped you in any way at all, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the talk with your friends so that they can get the benefit as well. Okay, bye for now.